and less comedy for Ipswich against Manchester City. They were beaten 6-0. We'll get the guys' thoughts on that. But a really champion's performance from the champions as they put 6 past Ipswich at Portman Road. That we're used to seeing reach those high levels are back performing, it seems, at those levels, and it's just clicking for Manchester City. And Phil Foden said it there, it's all about momentum.
He certainly did today. They were frightening in the attacking third, and Jeremy Doku thought was brilliant. Kevin De Bruyne, who was come back in, he's getting to fitness, and we're certainly seeing the best of him. And they were just so clinical in front of goal. Haaland will be disappointed he didn't get more than his one. He had an opportunity early on, but they were just magnificent. Take nothing away from them. As poor as Ipswich were, I give all the credit to Man City, because I looked at them on Tuesday when they were 2-0 up. I looked at the intensity, getting close to people, the work rate out of possession from Manchester City was brilliant today. And don't get me wrong, it's easy when you go and blow the team away, but they were clinical, took the chances, and it was a nice afternoon for them.
And the reason we're talking about momentum, and probably why Manchester City are talking about momentum, is because they've come here today, and it's a team who are inside the bottom 3, and they've beaten them, yes, 6-0. But the fixtures that are coming up for Manchester City are a lot tougher. They've got PSG in the Champions League, and given that City are only a point or two out of the place where they could drop out of the Champions League in this new format, that game against PSG, who aren't doing much better than them, is huge. And then it's games against Chelsea and Arsenal in the league, with Newcastle to come and Liverpool. Yeah,
it's going to be a difficult run for them, but after looking at their performance today, they just look like the City of old. And as Dawes was saying there, he's right, maybe Ipswich made it a little bit easier for them. But going into that PSG game and then Chelsea, Club Brugge, I don't think they could have put in a better performance individually. Kevin De Bruyne looked like he's back to his old self, sharp. Phil Foden scoring goals again. Haaland, he's getting on the act. Jeremy Doku, that's probably the best performance we've seen from him in a Manchester City shirt. I think that will give them so much credit, because although the scoreline was 6, if you look at the opportunities they missed as well, it could have been, the scoreline, I know it was out of sight and there were 6, but it could have been 8, 9, 10 goals this evening. So I think that will give them huge confidence, regardless who it was against the opposition today. The fact that they won so dominantly and won the ball back out of possession so quickly, it reminded them of Manchester City of old.
Yeah, and it reminds themselves of what they're capable of. This is something that Pep Guardiola was saying earlier in this bad run of form that they've been on, that they needed to be reminded of who they are and what they'd achieved. Is this the kind of performance that can do that?
100%, and I think, you know, traditionally Manchester City, they've not always hit their peak until this time anyway. You know, whether they've won the league or whether they're in the situation they're in now. But today looked like there's a trend going on with City over the recent years, and actually they started, I thought today the biggest thing was, they were clinical in front of goal, they looked clean in the final third, but I thought physically they were exceptional. There were some really hard yards put in today on and off the ball, and to be fair, for all of the football that they play and how well and how much praise they've had over the years from us all, I do think the way that they work off the ball is exceptional, and that can actually set a foundation for on the ball as well, because those are your minimum standards, what you require. You'll see it with, you know, teams, you know, at the bottom end of the league, Everton today, and you look how hard they ran to grind out that win, and it's massive. So that's something Manchester City players do, and it's innate in them. It's what Guardiola demands. But yeah, I agree with the guys. I totally think they are back in terms of that was a performance where we can go, that looked recognisable. The challenge now is, can they sustain it?
There is a Manchester derby coming up for you if you're watching on Sky Sports main event. It's Manchester United against Manchester City, who are trying to chase down Chelsea at the top of the table. Meanwhile, here on Sky Sports Premier League, we're going to be reflecting on that game between Ipswich and Manchester City.
Backed off. They didn't do anything. It caused absolute carnage all game. Loved it. And when De Bruyne does the running behind, I mean, this is what we've seen from Manchester City from years gone by. But today, everything just clicked. Gets a little bit fortunate, a little bit of ricochet off Darryl Shea, but the touch from Foden, again, maybe a little bit fortunate, but take nothing away. It's a snapshot finish. Benty's probably better talking about finishing than myself, but it was so quick and instinctive when it just fires it straight into that bottom corner. Great finish.
Yeah, gets it under control, and he gets a bit lucky, as you said, the little ricochet, but just to swivel and hit it, compose, hit the target from there. And as I said, it doesn't need to be a clean strike. When you're that close, if you hit the target, it's got a chance of going in, and it's a really good finish.
Mateo Kovacic has made it 4 Premier League goals for the season. This already is his best ever scoring season in the Premier League. What did you make of his goal, Izzy?
Yeah, I think he's slipped under the radar a little bit since coming into City. I think he's very effective in terms of what he does. He's industrious, he's tidy on the ball, and he also adds this to the game as well. And this is really clever from City because they recognise how many players Ipswich have got over on this right-hand side. Everyone's clustered around the ball. And it's Foden again, just the level of awareness to know that Kovacic is the free man on the edge of the box. And if he just lays it off nicely for him to hit first time, and that's what exactly he can do with that level of quality.
And then Phil Foden bringing up 100 senior goals for club and country with Manchester City's third.
Do you know what's so good about these 2 goals for Phil Foden is that he's the opposite wide player, and too many times opposite wide players don't get into position where they can score goals. They hang out to the back post. Phil Foden for his 2 goals is at the near post or in that middle of the 6-yard box, and that's when you get your rewards. That's where you get a bit lucky, because if you look at it here, we've highlighted him there. To bust the gut to get in there, opposite wide players usually stay wide and they don't get into this type of position. But when you do, that shows you, it doesn't really matter how many Ipswich Town players are around you. If you're in that position in space, you'll always get opportunities. And when you're playing with the likes of Kevin De Bruyne, people that can see that pass, you'll get your rewards. And Phil Foden, again, I thought today was exceptional. And that was the 2 times he got 2 goals. There were more occasions where he got himself in there and maybe the final pass wasn't right, but a great position for an opposite wide man to take up.
At half-time, with Ipswich trailing by 3-0, you were saying you're just in the dressing room thinking, please don't let it be 6.
Yeah.
It did go on to be 6, and just 4 minutes after the restart, it was 4.
It was, Kelly, and this man, he was brilliant all afternoon. Arguably, he could have took the player of the match away. I thought it was brilliant, Jeremy Doku. But it starts from Edison, that pass into Gunderwood and then into De Bruyne. I mean, this I'm thinking he's going to try and find De Bruyne there. That reverse pass, I'm not too sure if there's any other goalkeeper in the Premier League can do that and has the audacity to put the ball at risk. Yes, the 3-0 up, of course, but then you give it to him wide, and now Ben Godfrey's in all kinds of trouble. Sam Morsey tries to get across, but he's too quick for him. Another little unfortunate deflection, but I think the performance of Jeremy Doku deserves that, because he just put those defenders on the back foot. They didn't know whether to close the ball, send him down the line, and they did nothing. That, you have to send him on his left foot. You cannot let him come inside and do that. Good finish with a little bit of fortune from the deflection.
And of course, if you've got 6 goals, Erling Haaland is going to be on the score sheet.
At some point, yeah, off the back of his big contract signing this week. But yeah, I think this goal it's unfortunate, because Jack Clark in the centre of midfield, he just doesn't see Doku, plays it square. And the timing of release from Doku, I think that's the key part in this, and the finish as well. We just look at this here, Doku's position, he's high, he reads it, he's on his bike, ready to go. But I think Doku, this is where he needs to start adding more of this to his game, releasing it at the right time. I think the pass, the weight of it into Haaland allows him to have that first-time finish, and it couldn't really be better for Haaland. He's coming across it on his left foot, and he hits it into the floor. What do you think about that? But he hits it into the floor to go over the keeper. I think he means it. What do you think?
I'm not sure he does mean it, but I mean, it's scuff-eye goal. You scuff it in the corner, but I mean, Izzy makes a good point. It's a great pass from Doku, but I think the intensity of the run from Haaland is what makes him pass it, because Haaland's almost screaming at him, listen, I'm there, I've made the run, just lay it in there. I think if he ambles there, he probably doesn't get the pass. But I mean, it's a really tidy finish. I'm not sure he means it. I think he just tries to go.
You do see players hit it into the ground to bounce over the keeper.
Thanks,
but it's
Kelly.
whether or not
Thanks,
that
Kelly.
is a particular example.
Kelly, I played with Benty for years. He used to scuff them all in.
I didn't mean to do it.
100 club, mate.
I didn't mean to do it.
It's modern game.
Listen, but before the game, we were talking about the fact that Manchester City look like they're going to be very active in January. We talked about the players, the youth products that have left Manchester City and gone on to have really good Premier League careers, are performing particularly well this season, whether they could have used them. One that they've kept is James McAtee, and he's been really good for them when he's been called on to perform. He got his goal in this as well.
Yeah, it's a lovely header. It's a lovely timing of the run. You could just see him kind of drifting in there. We saw Foden do that a lot before he withdrew. But James McAtee, it's a lovely pass from Kovacic, but he's also brave as well. But when he goes to make the run, he has a little stutter, because I don't think I'm going to be offside there. And that's brave, because 9 times out of 10, you're worrying where the goalkeeper is, where the ball is, and you think, well, I might get clattered here. And he doesn't. And he gets up really, really well and just guides it into that far corner. It's a lovely, lovely header.
It was only last week he got his hat-trick as well in the FA Cup, wasn't it? I love seeing Haaland after as well, when he's on the touchline. standing up and celebrating. It's a 6th goal. Young player coming through, getting an opportunity, and it was a lovely guided weighted header into the back.
I think Alan Smith mentioned it in commentary when he looked at the celebrations. It gave the impression that he was a really popular young player around the club. You can tell by watching how the players celebrate with him.
Yeah, 100%. When players come through the ranks and get an opportunity, he's been out on loan and now he's been in and around the first team and he's taking his chance. And you can tend to when you're a senior player and young players get it, you think, yeah, you want him to go on and do well, and he did that.
You look at Manchester City, you look at this performance, 5 different goal scorers in a 6-0 victory against an Ipswich side that are in the relegation places, but that have put in some really good performances and weren't at their best today. Just put that into context for us, Izzy.
Well, I think Ipswich midweek going into that game against Brighton, I thought that they might get a result. And they didn't, and then you look at the next fixture, it's Manchester City, and to be honest with you, at the moment you don't really know what Manchester City's going to turn up, and you can tell how well coached Kieran McKenna's Ipswich side are. They're fantastic on and off the ball. They did create a few chances in the first half and they looked like they were gathering momentum, but Manchester City, they really did take control, and like Phil Foden said, it was the 2 centre midfielders, Gundogan and Kovacic, who just started to dictate the play and, you know, stamp their authority on how they wanted the game to progress. And I think if they hadn't got a foothold in the game like they did, it could have been a different story. And we're talking about 6-0 here. But I think that City, the way that they played, it was more like it. And you could see the players celebrating with the fans as well at the end. It kind of felt like it meant something, you know, big, that they might actually think, hang on a minute, we're back in the game here.
Yeah, it did feel like a statement win for Manchester City. We'll hear what Pep Guardiola made of it, and conversely, we'll get the thoughts of Kieran McKenna as well next. And they will be keeping those energy levels up throughout the night on Sky Sports NFL. Manchester City keeping their energy levels up in that 6-0 victory over Ipswich. Let's hear from Pep Guardiola with David Craig.
Pep, in recent weeks and months, you've had to stand in front of us and talk about pain and suffering, but how much today can you tell us about the joy and pleasure from a performance like that from your team?
Yeah, leave the last 30 minutes with the result done, so a long time didn't happen. So yeah, we're really pleased. We are back in many things that defined this team for the last decade, I would say last years, and really pleased for the players who deserve it, because they suffer a lot this time. But we recover some identities that we lost in this path for the obvious reasons for special injuries. But yeah, really pleased for the victory, 3 points, to climb a little bit the qualification, because the qualification for the Champions League next season will be so tough.
In this good run that you're on at the minute, now at 5 unbeaten, we've asked you a number of times, are you back at your best? And you've said, no. But today, did we see a big step towards your best?
See, much better, yeah. Maybe it's not our best, but it's closer that the consistency we have in our game and controls in many departments. Not all of them, but most of them that didn't happen. The previous games, okay, we won, but we were not that we have been today.
There seemed today, particularly amongst the goals, in the creativity, a sharpness and a crispness in the tight spaces. Did you sense that? Did you feel that? Was that something that's been missing from that DNA and identity you talk about?
Yeah, but it's related in the way we went without the ball. So you cannot play in these short spaces, in these movements. We are not the right tone to go to them. It's a team that they make a good build-up. Today we make an incredible good effort for the defenders and everyone. And when that's happened after with the ball, you are clever, you are quicker, you are faster in your decision making, and everyone is related. You cannot play quick and good and be wise and precise. We are not connected defensively.
To have the success you've had as a team and as a group, you have to be ruthless. Was that ruthlessness back as well today for Manchester City?
Well, the 6 goals, Ipswich Town at the end here, Chelsea lost, Aston Villa draw, they won in Spurs away, so at the end it's a good team. Liam is a fantastic striker, and so I think the most important thing is that the players, they saw themselves recognize what we are. So that is the best thing I can say.
Phil Foden came in here and said he's playing with a smile again on his face, but Kevin De Bruyne as well. Have they found a joy and a love again of football that perhaps was missing, and can you explain why it might have been missing?
No, a long time. long time. So they enjoy, and when they play good. Of course, victory helps, but when they know exactly. So I said many times, so they know the standards. They know exactly what they have done in the past. They know when they play good or play bad. It's not talking about winning or losing. So it's not just the pleasure in our job, I insist many times, for just to win 3 points. You have to enjoy and be part and be something like in our profession. So it doesn't matter if you're a professional or an amateur. You have to do the proper things. So you can be a theatre in the best theatre in London, or you can make a theatre in Sheffield. And the guys who go there in the theatre in Sheffield, they did it because they love to do that. And this is the most important thing, and we lost it. We lost it for many, many reasons, mainly for the injuries, but hopefully, step by step, we can come back what we were.
Well, it's great to see them smiling on you as well. Well done.
Thank you.
Doesn't matter who you are or where you play, you have to apply those levels of intensity. You have to have that joy of the game, and that will get you the results that you want. He said it's not always about the 3 points. The 3 points will come if you apply those same principles. And Manchester City are now back in the top 4, and they're there on goal difference ahead of Newcastle.
100%. If they'd have applied that in the final 10 minutes of the game against Brentford in midweek, that would have happened. They were passive. Today they were anything but a passive. They were in the face, they were pressured defensively, they were very, very good. Out of possession, can't question it today. And that's what he's talking about there. To win football matches at any level, you have to outwork the opposition. And then we all know the quality that Manchester City possess. They will hurt you, they'll destroy you. And that's what happened today.
When you look at the players that they're interested in this January transfer window, and the fact that Manchester City, yes, have had a really good result here today and are starting to build a bit of momentum, there is still a rebuild that's going on behind the scenes. They're looking at Marmoush from Frankfurt, who's a forward, Kusanov from Lens, who's a centre-back. They've got Reece from Palmeiras, from Palmeiras, who's a centre-back as well. So there is more speculation about whether or not it's Douglas Luiz could potentially be coming in from Juventus. All those, are they telling us where Manchester City see problem areas, Izzy? I
think they are. I mean, also another area where we'd probably say would be fullback as well, with Kyle Walker, potentially leaving the club as well. But I think I would start centre midfield. I think if it is going to be Douglas Luiz, I think that's exactly what they need. We all know, the impact that Rodri and the absence of him has caused problems. Today, they look good in midfield with Kovacic and Gundogan, but that hasn't always been the case of late. I think with the squad playing the way they did today and being unbeaten, is it in 5 games, I think that they are looking like they can attack the Champions League. And I think that's the one where they've got to obviously make sure they qualify for that next season. But these players coming in, if they do get through the door, they're going to provide that instant competition for the players that are already here. It might give people, you mentioned about Doku going, if Marmoush is going to come through the door, Doku plays like that did today, then you're starting to generate that level of competition again. And there's definitely areas where they can definitely rebuild, but it's difficult to do in January. Yeah, and when you're looking at the players that they're interested in, you look at where the performances were today. I wonder if that level of competition is maybe already one of the. I mean, he said it himself, Guardiola. There's a million reasons why this drop off at the start of the season could have happened. There's also going to be a lot of reasons why they might start to pick up again. Could that be one of them? Yeah, of course. When new faces are coming through the door, you've got to pick up your performance. We spoke about Jeremy Doku. That's probably the best I've ever seen him in a Manchester City shirt. He looked clear of mind. He was getting into the areas and picking the right pass or having a shot or goal. Too many times this season, he's getting to the area and he'll hit the first man or he'll shoot when he should pass it. But I do think when they let Julian Alvarez go last season, I always looked at that and thought, have they left themselves a bit short in that attacking area? Because 19 goals he got last season, I think 11 in the league. He's someone who could kind of deputise for Erling Haaland and take a little bit of the pressure off him. When he went, you almost force-feed Erling Haaland every single game for him to get you goals. The fact Marmoush is coming in, I think he'll be a massive difference for them because he can play centre-forward, he can play off the left, and just gives them another option up there because even a side as good as Manchester City, if you keep doing the same things, you can be a little bit predictable. It might not happen straight away, but at some point people will start to figure you out. And it just looks like to me now, all of a sudden, 1 or 2 players have picked up their performances and that could carry them into that second half of the season. And even if you do go on to achieve things, does it lift a dressing room when new players come in, particularly if they're players at
a high level.
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about Manchester City for recent months now about injuries, performance. So you look for a little bit of help. And these players, these have been the best players for years. 4 Premier League titles on the bounce. It's remarkable what they've done. But sometimes you just look around the dressing room thinking, I could do with a little bit of a lift. I could do with some spark, a new voice in and around it, a bit of a character. I mean, the 2 young centre-halves that you're looking at, I think they're for the future. Diaz coming back today is huge. But Mamouche just gives them another strength in the attack. You look, he comes in off the left, he runs in behind. It's going to be different for him if it does, and when it does happen from Frankfurt. But, I mean, positives, and today's a huge positive on the back of the good results recently. That can only go. They were only going to go one way for me. I still think it's a long way to be hunting Liverpool down though.
Yeah, it could be tricky this season in terms of challenging for the title, although because of what we've seen Manchester City do in previous seasons, I don't think anybody would want to write them off completely, but they do have players coming back to form. We touched on Phil Foden a little earlier on. That's 100 goals for him now, for club and for country, 96 of them for Manchester City. And when you have a player like this who's at the peak of his powers, as he seems to be coming back to, and he's only 24, how promising does the future look?
Yeah, I think this team, you know, he's come through the academy, and we all know that. We all know the heights that he's reached in a Manchester City shirt. And you just made an excellent point, Dawes. I don't want to steal your thunder, but you know about he's been through those hard moments as a team with England, but he's not been through it really yet with Manchester City. And they will have had to have dug deep, because winning, it's like you can't be motivated by failure. You can't just be motivated because you've lost a game. This has happened too many times that they've lost games this season. It's very easy to say you've lost, oh, hang on a minute, right, we need to sort it out. But because it's continuously happened, they've had to probably individually dig deep. And this man coming back into form now is massive. And I think it coincides with De Bruyne as well. De Bruyne, to me, looked like he looked sharp. He looked fit. He was getting into brilliant areas. I still don't think he's got that kind of high-speed overlapping run that we've seen him do from deep. But I think he's tweaking his game, and he's got the brains to do that. But this guy, the sky's the limit with this guy, Foden, and the team will be built around him and, of course, Haaland in the incoming years. I
think it's important for Phil as well. You've got to think his whole footballing education has been Pep. Yeah. That's all he's had. I mean, I remember the conversations when he was first coming through, should he go out on loan? And Pep said, no, he has to stay here. That might be an element why we've never seen the best of Phil in an England shirt, because you've had Gareth Southgate who did great things for England, but never quite figured out how to get the best out of Phil. Whereas he comes back to Manchester City, he fits into the system, he knows it like the back of his hand, and he puts in this type of level of performance. I mean, he was outstanding last season. You don't just lose your form overnight. This season at the start, he didn't look like the same Phil Foden we saw from last season. But as Izzy said there, the fact that De Bruyne now is getting back up to speed, that's only going to help Manchester City.
Manchester City then feeling positive after a big win against Ipswich. Let's hear what Kieran McKenna made of it. He's with David Craig.
Kieran, obviously a very tough and painful afternoon for you. What's your assessment?
Yeah, really difficult game. Opponent were much better than us, of course. I thought there was lots of positives, to be honest, in the early parts of the game. We could easily have had the first goal. For the first, I don't know the timings, but maybe 20-25 minutes, it was really, really similar to, you know, our best performances here. A little bit open on the transition with Haaland, but other than that, some good stuff. And then their quality took the game away from us. We didn't defend our box well enough. We made some big errors, and we opened up the game too much at times, and we were punished by a top opponent.
I know you won't look for excuses, but did you perhaps face today a Manchester City side that is more familiar to the Premier League in terms of their performance?
I don't think it's familiarity with the Premier League. We faced one of the best teams in the world with a collection of the very, very, very best players in the world. So, yeah, the opponent was better than us today on all aspects, and you know, we have to keep striving to improve.
How important is it you can't put this defeat into a box and go, right, that is what it is, and you look to the next game and not let it define your season?
Yeah, look, we know the jump and the climb that we've made. There's going to be some difficult days this year. They're never going to be enjoyable. We've had one or two. This is definitely one. We're facing one of the best teams in the world, and we came up short. So, you know, we don't accept it. We'll look to improve. We'll look at the areas, and there's certainly things that we have to do better today, all of us. But it's 38 games, and there's also been so many positive games this season. There's been so many positive performances. There was bits in there today that were good. There was bits that weren't good enough. So We'll move on to the next game. Of course, we have Liverpool away next week, so it's a week that we're going to have to dig in. We're going to have to show a lot of humility and togetherness. But over the course of the games, we know that we've been in lots of games, we've had results, and we've got to keep pushing for more.
Obviously, your fans who stood behind you right till the end here come to see the big teams play. You then, as you've alluded to, go to Liverpool next. That will be difficult. But ultimately, will it come down to your next home games, the likes of Southampton, that will define what happens for you this season back in the Premier League?
Well, you never know because, we've had wins against Chelsea and against Tottenham, so you don't know when your points are going to come. Of course, some games are harder than others, and Liverpool away is probably as hard as it gets at the moment, and Man City, when they hit that form today, there isn't much harder than that either. But we just need to compete for every game, whether it's Liverpool away or the games after that. We need to compete at our best every game. We didn't manage to do that today. It wasn't for a want of trying, but we need to do better, so we'll look to do that from next week and right the way through the end of the season.
We've seen some new faces in your squad today. That gives you a better balance, you've said. Do you expect to add to that? Do you still hope to add to that to give you a better chance of getting to your aim of staying in this division?
That's not where my thought is, to be honest. My thought is working with a group of players that are here. Bringing players in January and expecting them to have a defining impact in your season is not easy. It can happen, but at this level we're operating on, that pool of players is really, really small. So I think we're in a phase at the moment where we've had some new players coming in, some players leaving. That's always a tricky little moment as a group, but if we do things in the right way, we'll come out of it stronger and stronger with the group we have. If we can make some additions that help us, that make us stronger, then all the better. But we need to stick together and focus on everyone in the building at the moment, what we can do.
Just finally, despite the setback today, in what you've seen in some of those other results you've mentioned, and what you've seen in spells today before City hit top form, do you retain the belief that you still have the ability here to achieve what you need to achieve?
Oh, we believe that we can compete right to the end of the season. We believe that we've had 10 results so far. We haven't won as many games as what we would like, and I believe that we'll perform and we'll pick up results between now and the end of the season. Now, how many points we get, where that leaves us, what other teams do, all those things are out of our control. But I trust in the group to keep working. I trust to find the right response to this game, to find a better performance next week, and to give everything in every game to the end of the season. And where that gets us, we can't control.
Kieran, appreciate your honesty. Thank you.
Cheers.
But when you're newly promoted, results like that can happen. But the manner of that defeat, could that knock Ipswich, do you think? Could it knock their confidence?
You'd like to think not, because they're almost battle-tested from the very first game in the Premier League. When your first two games in the Premier League are Liverpool, Manchester City, so it's almost welcome to the Premier League. But it was a little bit damning. I thought they started off the game today well, but it's just Manchester City can do this to you. And one thing Kieran's been able to do really well this season is, after a difficult defeat, pick the players back up again. And bar today, I know they've had the Newcastle 4-0 and the West Ham 4-1. They've not really been blown away this season. Today's probably the exception, where Manchester City, everything they did, it went in, they played really well. And that's the best we've seen Manchester City. But for Ipswich, I don't think the confidence will be knocked too much. It won't be results like this, Manchester City, that keep them in the division. They've got Southampton coming up. That's a must-win. It's those type of games where I feel Kieran McKenna's adapted himself really well, and that's where we'll see whether Ipswich are good enough to stay in this division, not Manchester City coming to Portman Road.
No, and they still find themselves inside the bottom three. But look, they're level on points with Wolves, dependent on what happens in their game against Chelsea tomorrow. Everton winning has not done them any favours, because suddenly there's a 4-point gap, and then it's 8 points to Tottenham. So they've not put themselves in the best of positions, but there's still a long way to go this season. They've still got 16 games left to play.
Yeah, an awful lot of football still to play, and Kieran McKenna just said that he has to move on from today. It doesn't get any easier next week going to Liverpool.
And it's not an easy run.
No,
either.
It's not. Southampton here is huge. They picked up a point Southampton away, a late goal from Morsey, but this happens. I have been relegated before, and you've been hurt, and you have to try and pick the players up, show that belief, and put it to bed. That's how it is. When you're playing in this league, you've got to remember, which I'm sure reiterates, we were a League One team 2 years ago. Got promoted back-to-back last year in the Championship. Incredible. So this can happen. There's players newly through the door, so it takes time, but this can happen. Man City can blow anyone away. Better teams than Ipswich. So they're right in the mix. I had them down in a relegation battle. I don't think anybody would disagree with that. I'm sure Kieran knew that was going to happen. That's a reality of the Premier League. It's so hard. So he won't get too down about it. He'll try and move on, see where they can improve, and look forward to Liverpool next week. If he can.
But look forward to might not be the. But look, Izzy, you sort of alluded to this point earlier on, and Kieran McKenna mentioned it in his interview, the fact that there were turning points in this game, and it feels strange to say it at the end of a 6-0 defeat. He says they could have been 1-0 up before they went 1-0 down.
Yeah, these were all at 0-0, of course, and you know that effort there from Delat, this really cleverly worked set piece, which it's actually that man Haaland. You can see why he signed the big contract as a centre back. You know, clearing off the line, doing his defensive duties. And I think it was Burgess there with the header off the set piece. So they did threaten. They really did. And I think the way they started the game, the way they moved the ball from side to side, they got Leif Davis in a few times down on the left. You know, where we'd anticipated he'd find himself maybe in a back five a lot. Getting him forward was essential for them to try and get a foothold in the game. But I think, you know, what Dawes said there about the Southampton game, that's key. But how they react from today, and also the midweek loss against Brighton, how they then go and apply themselves against Liverpool will tee up how they perform against Southampton. But they look like a team to me that have all the tools to play good football and to be a real powerhouse at times.
And even early in the season, they put up a decent performance, or they put in a decent performance against Liverpool, even when they were new to the Premier League.
Yeah, I mean, first half against Liverpool, they were brilliant. And then, of course, Liverpool's quality kind of shone through in the end. But as Dawes said, they made a really good point. 2 years ago, they were in League One. They didn't even win League One. It was Plymouth that won the league. Then they finished second to Leicester last season. So if anything, they're probably ahead of schedule. I know it's not an excuse, and once you're here, you've got to prepare for it. But as I said, I don't think there's any disgrace in the way they've gone about their business this season. Maybe a little bit naive in certain games. I mean, the Leicester game, they're winning here 1-0. I think Jordan Ayew scores 90 plus 3. I think the Brentford game, they go 2-0 up, end up losing 4-3. The losing goal goes in 90 plus 6. So they've had opportunities this season to win and get more points on the board. But again, there's not much Premier League experience in the Ipswich Town side. And it's getting to, you're almost learning on the job. Calvin Phillips has come in. I think he's made a big difference. It was a big miss today, I thought. But I think Ipswich, the more they've gone on this season, the better they've got. But and as I said earlier, I don't think results like this, Manchester City, will define their season.
We saw when we looked at the table earlier on as well that Everton's win won't have helped Ipswich, but it's done Everton. The power of good. David Moyes back in his second spell in charge of Everton, masterminding that 3-2 victory over Tottenham. We'll talk about that from both sides, and we'll reflect on a 3-1 defeat at Old Trafford for Manchester United. Hear what Ruben Amorim has to say.
You'll never stop this.
Kovacic aimed it at McAtee. 6-love. They are beating them up good and proper.
And that result came almost at the end of a weekend in which the 9 away teams have scored 2 or more goals in all of the games. And that's the first time that has happened in Premier League history. If you were Wolves, you might be a little nervous ahead of the game against Chelsea tomorrow. You can see all the goals on the Sky Sports app. Best way to get there is to scan the QR code that you can see right there. But Manchester United, another defeat at Old Trafford for them. It was 3-1 this time at the hands of Brighton, who've now won at Old Trafford 3 seasons in a row. Nottingham Forest were 3-0 up against Southampton. They got a goal just after the hour and then a goal late on in that game to set up a relatively tense finish. Everton very much in control against Tottenham, bar 2 late goals that they conceded from Tottenham, but still took all 3 points to get David Moyes' first win on his return to Everton as their manager. So let's take a look at the goals and talk about this performance from Everton, because they were so much in control. There was so much energy about it, Izzy.
Yeah, it was just what the doctor ordered in terms of Moyes coming back in. They needed a win, and they found it against, you know, a Spurs side which are unpredictable. But it got off to a fantastic start with that guy Dominic Calvert-Lewin finding the back of the net with a really lovely bit of play, and then they just seemed to find their flow and they just dominated Tottenham. You could argue Tottenham, you know, the way they started the game, they didn't start with the correct shape. The players looked a little bit lost in terms of their roles, and Everton punished it, but they didn't change much, Everton. They just looked so much more creative in the final third, and the decisions they made off the ball, on the ball, were brilliant. And the third goal just before half-time kind of just epitomised where they were at. Imagine going in at 3-0 down, 3-0 up, sorry, they wouldn't have predicted that at all.
They wouldn't have predicted that, but maybe when they looked at the team sheet, and even though Spurs did manage to get the 2 goals back, the damage had been done then, and how much of that damage was caused by setting up with that back 3, Michael?
Yeah, well, we talked about how they were going to set up before the game with no Dominic Solanke. He was going to play as the number 9. Was Archie Gray going to go into midfield? No, they played a back three, and I've never seen an Ange Postecoglou team, certainly at Spurs, play in that way. So it's hard to go out there and implement what he wants them to do. And they were all over the place in the first half. Dragerson came off at half-time and they went back to the normal way of playing. Scored 2 goals in the second half, but they got what they deserved, nothing out of that game.
Let's hear if the manager agreed. Here's Ange Postecoglou with Emma Saunders.
Well, David, congratulations. When you signed the paperwork last week, these are the kind of results you hoped for. A bit of a nervy end, but how proud are you of the players?
Well, I think when you're in the position we're in, we know that sort of any win is a good win. I thought the first half we played really well and done a lot of really good things. Maybe could have scored a couple more in the first half as well. I know that Tottenham missed one chance, I think. But overall, I thought we done very well, put ourselves in a good position. And no, the thing was to go and get the 4th goal, and actually I think Dom had a great chance to make it 4-0 as well. But then it was a nervy ending. I knew if Tottenham got 1-0 we were going to be under pressure again because of the way they play. But thankfully we just about sorted out.
I think everything clicked today, you know. You go through them periods sometimes where you're not hitting the back of the net or you're not quite getting the rub of the green, but I think everything came together in my position in the team. You know, you live and die by your centre forward. So for me, it's just keep going, keep positive, and believing that the next one's going to go in, and it did today.
Well, I think the players have probably been needing a bit of confidence and a bit of belief. Sometimes when you get 1 goal, you start to think, hey, we're quite good at this. I thought certainly in the first half, we had 3 or 4 big chances, and there was a couple. I think there was another one hit the post. The keeper put a save onto the post. So look, we're thrilled that we've got 3 points in the game. Like Tottenham playing MD's a difficult game. And we knew it would be today. It was, but in the first half it looked as if we had done such a good job.
Yeah, obviously first half we just really struggled to get into the game, and that gave sort of Everton some momentum, and gave ourselves a mountain to climb. Having said that, the players certainly tried to claw the game back in the second half. It just fell short.
To be fair, no excuse though for that first half. The message was to be resilient, take a bit of pride in the second half. And we nearly got back into it, but like I said, it was too little too late, and a tough afternoon. Yeah.
You've gone in today, again, short on senior players with Dominic Solanke, the latest player to be sidelined. How does this affect now the next week and a half or so of this transfer window? I think you've spoken with a bit of patience this last week or so with the board. They're doing their best. Is there more of a sense of urgency to the situation now?
Oh, look, yeah, well, I mean, there will be, but that doesn't need for me to say it. I think everyone can see that. But again, it's, I have no issue with the way the club's going about it. They're working hard and trying to find solutions for us. These players need help for sure. Hopefully over the next sort of 10 days we find a solution for it.
Look, you don't expect them to come out sort of skipping and bouncing when they've just been on the end of a defeat, particularly in the way that happened against Everton. But Ange Postecoglou in particular and James Maddison seemed so low in those interviews, and they were there. They went up to the Spurs fans at Goodison Park, and Son looked extremely upset. We've seen him distressed after games before so far this season. It seems to be very difficult to see how Tottenham pick themselves up from this when they are so low.
I think Andrew's right, though. They need reinforcements. He didn't throw the ball under the bus. I think that's the biggest thing. They're decimated by injuries. And yes, their performance and the way they started the game, and James Maddison's made that point, wasn't good enough. Everton completely blew them out the water, scored goals when they were in that period. But I mean, they're down to their bare bones now. Solanke, who's been, I think, a really good signing.
So there's 10 players unavailable.
I mean, and 10 starters, not just 10 squad players. They've got goalkeepers missing, 2 centre-halves. And those, I mean, you watch them more than I do. Yeah. They are completely decimated. They need reinforcements.
They are 100%. I've talked about it so many times, and that record is not good reading. It's hard to look at it, and the performances haven't been good enough. And one thing with Ange Postecoglou, he always comes out and fronts it, and he's honest when it's not been good enough. And I'm sure he'll look at that today and say, look, I set the team out with a back three, something he's never done before. It takes time to work on that, and you could see it because they were all over the place in the first half. As soon as they went back in the second half, you could see it was better, but ultimately the performances and results haven't been good enough, and you become under pressure. And the longer it goes, confidence is draining, and you can see there, Pedro Porro's talking about being together, but ultimately you lose as many players as they do. In the starting 11, not squad players. Solanke today, Johnson, and then your two centre-halves, it's always going to be a challenge. But those players have to take responsibility. No point feeling sorry for yourself, because it isn't going to get easier. It's only going to carry on, and they have to find a way of getting back to winning ways, which is never easy when you're in this run of form.
But in that run of form, in the midst of all of that, there was that Carabao Cup semi-final first leg win over Liverpool, which a lot of Tottenham fans were very nervous about heading into that game. Has the excitement and the hope from that result, do you think, dissipated a bit?
No, I don't think so. I think you've got to look at that before going into it. I was probably one of those, Kelly. I was turning up. We were watching. I was there when Liverpool beat them 6-3, and it was demoralising. It was hard, but they turned up. They had a togetherness. He changed ever so slightly. People say Ange doesn't change. He's adapting ever so slightly. The three in midfield. He's tried to change today. He talks about resilience there, James Maddison. They weren't resilient in the first half because things happen. Credit to Everton, I'm taking nothing away from them, but Spurs have got to look what they didn't do right, and there was so many things in that first half. Players stepping out into areas, and Everton took advantage of that. So it's back to the drawing boards, Europe on Thursday, and then Leicester next weekend, where you've got to try and find something with inside. We talk about getting reinforcements in. It might not happen. January is a hard time, because hopefully some of these players for Tottenham will be coming back who are injured, and try and give that group a little bit of belief and try and win a game of football. And ultimately it comes down to breeding and getting that confidence, and it's never easy. We've all been in a dressing room where you're lacking it, and that certainly looks what Spurs are at this moment in time.
It's something in the water, I think, because we've had a couple of really honest managerial interviews post-match today. Ruben Amorim, after Manchester United's 3-1 defeat at Old Trafford by Brighton, said this.
In 10 games in Premier League, we won 2. I know that. Imagine what is this for a fan of Manchester United. Imagine what is this for me. So we are getting a new coach that is losing more than the last coach. I have full knowledge of that. Like I said, I'm not going to change, no matter what. And I know we can succeed, but we need to survive this moment, because I'm not naive. And I know that we need to survive now. So we are being the worst team, maybe, in history of Manchester United. I know that you want headlines, but I'm saying that because we have to acknowledge that and to change that. So here you go, your headlines.
Specifically headlines as well, because written down, that is a much stronger statement than it is when you hear it in the context of what Ruben Amorim said. But that's a comment that is now going to follow him, that we are maybe, he said, the worst Manchester United team ever. It's not, I mean, either he's trying to manage expectations or he's just trying to say, look, I understand the scale of the job here.
I think he knows what he's doing. I personally do. I think ever since he's come in to Manchester United, I think there's a real assurance about the way he speaks. I think he's very clear.
What do you think he's doing there?
I think he's sending a message to his players to say we can't go any lower than this in terms of where we stand in Manchester United's history. I mean, obviously we've not seen the game. It's not easy to comment on it. We've not seen it. However, I think that he's got a point in terms of that, and I think he knows what he's doing. I think he's sending a message to the players. The players will feel that. The players are clearly buying into his ideas, because you can see that, and it's just taking longer than what he expected. And I think the other thing to note is there's a lot of other teams in the Premier League right now who have done really good things under their managers, and they are way ahead of Manchester United in their so-called schedule of winning the Premier League. You look at Bournemouth, look at Newcastle, Forest this season. You know, these teams, they're better than Manchester United right now. And Manchester United are on a journey now under Amorim for as long as, you know, they see fit. And I think he is still the right man. Well, he is the right man to lead Manchester United forward.
I'm not so sure I'd be very happy if my manager came out and said I was part of the worst Manchester United history. Like, worst team in history. I understand what he's trying to do, but this is becoming embarrassing. Like, and if you're part of in that dressing room, we talked about confidence with Spurs, and I watched them against Southampton in midweek when Ahmed gets a hat-trick, it was covering up the cracks. Yeah. They won 3-1, no problem, you move on to the next, and as he said, we didn't see the game today, but it sounds like it was another damaging defeat, and this is worrying because Ruben Amorim knew he had a big job on his hands. I'm not too sure he knew it was this big.
And that's the interesting point in this, because there have been moments. There was the win against Manchester City, there was the draw against Liverpool. There have been moments for Manchester United where it looked like things were really progressing under Amorim.
Well, I think what you just said there is spot on. I don't think he realised the magnitude of the job and the work, and I still think that the group of players that are there now and the group of players who are part of that kind of existence under Ten Hag and the previous managers, there seems to be a cultural issue at Manchester United where standards have significantly dropped to the days where, you know, they were so successful under Sir Alex Ferguson. And I think over a period of time that's not been addressed, and that's why now they're having inconsistent results. And what Amorim's job is to get Manchester United up, competing consistently, performing consistently well and getting results at the same time. And like I said, I think there's other teams in the Premier League right now who are doing that better, which is why Manchester United are where they are.
There's a lot to reflect on for Manchester United and for Manchester United fans, and there's more football coming your way for you on Sky Sports. Let's take a look at the best of the action that you can watch. Chelsea against Wolves is the Monday Night Football, 6:30 on Sky Sports Premier League, and that, of course, will have a review of the best of the action from the weekend as well, and all the big talking points with Emmanuel Petit in the studio for that one.